Take Back Your Health Now, Episode 52.
You're listening to the Take Back Your Health Now podcast, the show that interviews the top doctors, athletes, trainers, and entrepreneurs to help you find the holy grail of health. Now here's your host, Dr. Dan Margolin.
Hi, this is Dr. Dan Margolin with another segment of Take Back Your Health Now, where we pull out all the stops in search of health's holy grail. We're very excited to have Andrea Beaman. Andrea is a natural food chef, author, and television host dedicated to alternative healing and green, sustainable living. Andrea was featured contestant on Bravo's hit reality TV show Top Chef Season 1. She is a regularly featured food and health expert on CBS News, has appeared on Barbara Walters, The View, Emeril Live, and Whole Living on Martha Stewart Radio. She is the host of the award-nominated Fed Up, a cooking show that educates guests and viewers on how to cook for and cure bodily ailments. Andrea makes learning about health, food, and positive lifestyle activities a joyful experience for everyone. Andrea, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, Dr. Dan.
So this is exciting. This is actually very exciting. Let's just jump in a little bit. What is green, sustainable living? What is that?
Well, it's how to be more sustainable while you're here on the planet without using up all of the fossil fuel and using up all of the resources. Because, you know, if we use up all of the resources, which I don't think it's possible that we actually can, but we're really depleting a lot of the resources. If we do that, we're actually going to, kill ourselves. That's the only way to put it. It's like a mass suicide, right?
Right.
You know, it just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, we have to learn how to be more sustainable on this earth that we're living on. We can't keep destroying the water. We can't keep polluting the land. We can't keep, digging up all the oil. It's just crazy what we're doing. Like, we're putting ourselves on the extinct species list. There's no doubt in my mind.
So how could Dan Margolin in Oradell, New Jersey, how could I help in sustaining livability for everybody? What would be certain things that I could personally do to do that?
Oh, well, the catchphrase, eat local and seasonal, it is much deeper than most people even think. So if I eat local and seasonal, right? So I live in New York, and in New York, there's an abundance of apples and berries and all of these fruits available. And if I eat bananas while I'm in New York, and I'm not saying that a banana is a bad food, and I'm not saying anything about bad about bananas, but if I choose to eat bananas, the amount of fossil fuel that it takes for a banana to get from Costa Rica or some other place to New York, the amount that's burned is not sustainable at the price, right? But if I choose to get an apple that grows in upstate New York, I'm really minimizing my footprint on the planet.
Gotcha. So, Andrew, are you saying that you hate bananas? Is that
No, I don't hate bananas. And I know the banana growers are throwing darts at my picture right now.
No, I understand. But I never looked at it that way. And I've spoken with a lot of people. One was Dr. Gundry, who talks about, we're not actually made to eat all these different fruits all year long.
That's correct.
Right? So, just interesting. How did you get started in this? How did you bring us back to the beginning?
Well, sickness. Sickness is the way that you find health, right? You have to be really not feeling well in order to make changes and shifts. And that's what happened to me. At 28 years old, I was diagnosed with hyperthyroid, and I had a large goiter and heart palpitations and anxiety, and my immune system kept crashing. And the doctor had said to me, you need to take radioactive iodine to destroy your thyroid and then be on medication for the rest of your life.
Wow.
And I was like, Doc, I don't want to take radioactive anything. And, I certainly don't want to be on medication for the rest of my life. It's not even fun medication. It's not like you're giving me acid, right?
Right.
So I said, listen, I know that my diet and my lifestyle is total crap. I'm not oblivious to the fact that, I eat crap. I'm a chronic dieter. I live on coffee and sugar. I said, I need to change my evil ways, so to speak. And
what was Andrea's like? What was your diet like back then? What were you eating?
Well, I was a chronic dieter, Dan. So that meant that I was excluding entire food groups. At the time when I was dieting, through the 80s and the 90s, it was all about no fat and low fat. So I had taken out fat from my diet. And what I was doing by doing that was slowly but surely breaking down my endocrine system, my immune system, my bones, because we need fat. We need good quality fat. So I didn't have fat for like 20 years. And instead I was having all these chemical sweeteners, NutraSweet, Sweet and Low, all of this crap.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And, like my day was like in the morning I would get up and I had no energy. So I have to have coffee with chemical sweetener just to get kick-started. And then I'd have a bagel with nothing on it, right? New York. I'd have a bagel with nothing on it.
But you got to admit, those are the best bagels ever.
Oh, my God. They're delicious.
Absolutely.
They're delicious. And then, lunchtime would roll around and I'd have like a salad, right, with some little thing on it. And then dinner time would come and I'd have like a slice of pizza with the cheese pulled off. And, I'd have maybe a tuna fish sandwich on a no-fat bread with low-fat mayo. It was just crazy, bizarre dieting behavior. And it was breaking down my body with every single bite of all these non-food substances and chemical sweeteners and stimulants and everything else that I was eating. I was breaking myself down at a very young age.
Wow, so that's when that whole goiter started, and that's when you realize, hey, there's something's got to change.
Oh, yeah, totally.
So you decide that something's got to change. How do you go about educating yourself exactly as to what that is that needs to change?
Well, it was interesting. My education came from watching my mom with breast cancer. So years prior, my mother in the 1980s had been diagnosed with breast cancer. And back then they did something called a radical mastectomy. And that meant that they took off the breast and the lymph nodes and practically all the skin where the cancer was. So they did that to her and then put her through the rounds of chemo, radiation, the whole thing. And after 5 years, she was considered cancer-free. They said, oh, yeah, cancer hasn't come back. In 5 years, you're cancer-free. But 11 years later, she fainted in the bathroom, and we took her to the hospital, and they did all of this testing on her. And the doctor said, listen, that breast cancer came back, and it's in her lungs and in her bones and in her brain, and it's everywhere in her body and in her liver. And you have to do all these, treatments again. So we started putting her through those treatments, the chemotherapy, the radiation, everything you could imagine. And my dad had read an article about a Dr. Hugh Faulkner that had healed himself of pancreatic cancer using something called a macrobiotic diet. So he said, let's try this diet. This cancer came back. Let's try this weird diet, right? Yeah. And we did. We tried this diet with my mom, and we noticed a couple of things. We noticed that her energy got a little better. The color, because she was now gray and pale from all the chemotherapy and all that other stuff. Yeah, she had a little color come back to her cheek, her cheeks and her lips, and her eyes seemed brighter. And as I was eating the food too at that time, I noticed that I was going to the bathroom on a daily basis. And for a chronic dieter, that's, rare. When you're chronically dieting, you go to the bathroom once every 5 days.
Right.
Yeah, so, I noticed these changes with my mom, and we kept her on that diet for about a year and a half, and then she died. And I think it was a combination of, just abusing the body with all of this harsh chemicals and really warrior treatment. Radiation is like, you're a warrior to go through that. Right. And also, like, I look back at the macrobiotic diet, and it was a great stepping stone, but it was incomplete. And so my mom passed away, but at that learning moment, I planted the seed in my mind that if I ever get sick with something and they tell me that they're going to give me radiation for anything, I'm going to try natural foods first. So that's what I did. When I was first on this path to healing, I was using a macrobiotic diet. And it was like grains and beans and vegetables and seaweed and fish. And, it was all the crap was taken out. And it took about 18 months, and my goiter disappeared. My thyroid normalized.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. You know, and now it's 20 years later and my diet is very wide. It's not that micro macro 50% grain. It's all foods from all categories that are naturally raised and local and seasonally produced. But it was an amazing stepping stone for helping me understand that your food becomes your blood and your blood becomes your tissues and your organs and everything that's going on inside your body.
This was a major awakening for you.
Oh yeah, it was huge.
Wow. So you get into this, right? You start studying it. How did the chef part come in? How did you get, and then tell us a little bit about being on the season of Top Chef. That's sort of fascinating.
Yeah, well, the chef stuff started because I was sick, and I said, okay, one of the things that I learned in my macrobiotic years when my mom was sick was that you've got to get into the kitchen and cook. Like, there's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. You've got to get reconnected back to the food that's going to become your body. So I started to cook. I would cook in the mornings before I would go to MTV. That's where I worked. I would cook in the mornings. I would cook my breakfast. I would cook my lunch. I would bring it with me. I would come home. I would cook my dinner. So my chefing experience came from literally getting into the kitchen and cooking. And of course, tweaking it and then taking classes and all that stuff. And then after I healed myself, I just started teaching people how to cook. I was like, okay, let's go. Get your butts into the kitchen. Let's go.
Right. And what kind of, nowadays, because I go out to restaurants a lot, right? Just because my schedule is so busy, I try to eat healthy. But did you have a hard time getting people back into the kitchen?
Oh yeah, still to this day.
You do, right?
Yeah, but I always tell them, when are you going to stop and take care of yourself? When is that going to happen? So yeah, I go out to eat dinner all the time. Me and my husband go out to dinner, but we eat breakfast at home. 7 out of 8 days we're eating breakfast at home. We'll make a lunch at home. We don't go out every single night because
right.
I know what goes on in kitchens.
Right. Yes.
They're not using the best oils. Everything is fried.
So you go out to a restaurant. What do you order? Like, how do you maintain the diet when you're at some of these restaurants?
Oh, it's easy. Because the restaurants that I go to, they're sourcing great ingredients. For me, that's a top priority. I want to know that the chef is sourcing from local farms, great ingredients, animals that are naturally raised, local foods, clean, organic. So there are lots of restaurants that have that.
Andrea, how do you choose that? How would you find out?
Oh, you go online and you say local, organic, seasonal restaurant. That's the beauty of the web.
That's complex.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So you get the list and then you start eating that. Do you have a couple of restaurants that are like your favorites?
Oh, there's so many. There's so many of them. Like even some of the great chefs are all sourcing great ingredients. Like Jean-Georges. In his restaurants, he sources local ingredients and great ingredients and animals that are naturally raised. I mean, there's so many that even in New York City, you could just look and there'll be a whole list of people that are using organic ingredients or grass-fed animals or, there's so many that I couldn't even list them all.
I tell you, you're really riding a wave of awareness now because I see it too. Whenever you speak with people, they're much more cognizant of what they're putting into their mouths.
Yes.
It wasn't like that 10 years ago. Even for myself, it wasn't like that. But now I guess we've become more aware of, like you said, the sweeteners, the aspartames, and the horrible things that they do for you.
Right.
And I've just seen an awakening. I'm so excited to have somebody like yourself on that's not only recognized that, but it's doing something about it. It's making it easier for all of us to really take advantage of these things.
Oh yeah, totally. And Dan, there are some times where I don't, if I have to travel to another state and and nothing's popping up. There's nothing local, seasonal, organic, or anything like that. When I go out in another restaurant that I don't know, I'm not familiar with the ingredients, I'll always eat lower on the totem pole, meaning I'll eat, more vegetables as opposed to more of the meats because, all the toxins accumulate in the fat cells and accumulate as you go up the food chain. So I won't sit down at a steakhouse that is, not sourcing naturally raised animals. If I am, at a business meeting and that's all I'm at a steakhouse somewhere, I'll get a piece of fish. I'll get some vegetables,
Well, talk to us about that, Andrew. What are the most toxic foods? Like when you go out to a restaurant, what should you avoid?
Well, you should avoid, of course, any of the sodas. Right? Just get water, get tea. Just avoid the soda, but avoid the top of the food chain. Right? So if you are sitting down in a restaurant and you want a piece of meat, but it's not a locally raised or a grass-fed animal, you know that you're getting a ton of antibiotics. You know that you're getting potentially a lot of excess hormone. You know that you're probably getting an animal that has been kept in a factory farm, diseased until, brought to slaughter, barely alive, no access to sunshine. So all of that has to be taken into consideration when you sit down to a meal anywhere. So if I'm looking at that and I'm saying, okay, if the food is going to become my body on a cellular level and an energetic level, do I want the animal that is enslaved in the factory farm, or do I want the animal that is out in the grass, feeding, living, sunshine, exercise, right? It just... Yeah, I look at our society and I think about how human beings right now are enslaved in literally factory farms. And I'm like, it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense because they're energetically eating that. So,
wow. You actually see it throughout the culture, throughout the people.
Oh my God, totally. Totally.
It is, sometimes you walk around and people look a little bit zombified.
Yep.
And you're saying a lot of that is just from what they're eating.
Yeah. Everything is energy. Albert Einstein told us that. All the physicists tell us that everything is energy. So what is the quality of that energy? What is the type of that energy? Is it energy that is stagnant and stuck and not moving and, no vibration? Or is it a high vibration energy? A plant that's been naturally raised, right? Because I'm not just talking about animals. I'm talking about everything here on the planet. Is it water that is polluted, or is it water that's running through the rocks and the streams? And, is it coming from, I remember the East River in the 70s and the 80s?
Yes.
Even the fish couldn't live in there, right?
So
Crazy. So we have to take all of that into consideration. What are we putting into our body? Because it's becoming us on a cellular level and on an energetic level.
I never looked at it from that viewpoint. I love that. What, Andrew, what are the if you were to say the foods that you should absolutely be taking, consuming, and where you should get them, give us the components of a really healthy diet.
Okay, like I said when we first started, local and seasonal, and most people don't have any idea what that is because we have access to every food from everywhere around the world at any time. So if I were to go to the farmer's market today in New York City, the local farmers are only bringing in what they can physically harvest in this environment. So what do they have? They probably have still roots that have been wintered over from the fall. They probably have all of the spring greens that are coming in, all of the little herbs that are coming in. They're going to have not a lot of fruit actually right now, just apples and pears. Strawberries will be coming in next month, and then more fruits will be coming in. So I'll give you a great example. I don't know if you've ever eaten a peach in December in New York, but it tastes like a mealy, horrifying, and not even sweet. It's terrible.
Look good, but they look good, right?
Yeah.
Wow, this is delicious. And then you just go, oh my God.
Yeah. No wonder why kids don't want to eat fruit, right? Because the fruit is, if it's a peach and it's picked ripe in New York, that would be August. That would be August, going into September. It's picked ripe. When you go to the farmer's market, the peaches are so fragrant that you're practically drooling when you pass by.
Right.
And you're like, oh my, because they're picked at the peak of ripeness. They've had all of this time on the tree connected to the source, getting all the sunshine that they need so that they can become the most vibrant source of food, as opposed to in January or December, the peach that's picked unripe, still in its infancy, premature, and then shipped 2,000 or 3,000 miles here, right? So we have to look at that and say, okay, let's first and foremost to get the most flavorful food and the food with the most amount of nutrition and vibrancy and energy. I want to go to my local environment and see what is growing and pick that food. Use that food. And we don't have to go out there and pick it. That's why that's why there's farmers. That's why there's foragers, right?
Yeah,
Although I would.
My daughter's not So we've gone to these, the orchards where you pick the apples. That's the most fun things, and they taste so different.
Yes.
It really takes it up a notch. So
Yes.
I just had never sort of looked at it from the viewpoint of just buy locally. You see signs like that, but you never really look at it from just a health standard. Like, wow, that's sustainably, it works. And from a nutritious viewpoint, you're getting higher nutrition. I love it.
Yeah. It's a win-win. Like I said, it's a win-win for us. It's a win-win for the environment because you're not getting food that's been shipped, using up thousands of miles of fossil fuel, keeping our desire and connection to the oil industry, right? And it's a win-win for the whole entire world, actually.
Andrea, you are a brilliant woman. Let me just say that.
That's why they pay me the big bucks, Dan.
That's why you're getting the big bucks. I'm looking at your website right now, right? And there's so many recipes. We've got one here: curried lentils with burdock root. What is burdock root?
Oh, yeah. It's considered a weed. Most farmers will get angry at it because it'll grow and it's just so deep. Burdock root is a classic and traditional root. It's been around for as long as human beings have been eating. And it's considered in many ancient medicines, it's considered a blood purifier as well as a lymphatic cleanser. And in Hawaii, the tradition was originally to give burdock root to the male before he got married and before the wedding night because it was a blood purifier and what is an erection.
Oh, wow.
Blood, right? So it makes the blood flow more smoothly. The burdock root is such a strong root that nothing can grow around it because it takes up all the minerals in the soil. So it has these really wide, expansive leaves, and nothing can grow in that area with the exception of that burdock root. So it looks like a stick. It looks like a stick that has fallen off a tree. And you can find it at farmers markets, and sometimes they carry it at Whole Foods and other health markets.
What does it taste like?
It tastes kind of sweet, like when you cook it for a long time. It tastes sweet. I can't really compare it to anything. Maybe a cross between a parsnip and a carrot, but it's much more fibrous, and it contains inulin, which feeds the fungi and the bacteria that live in the large intestine. So this will help you have also a good bowel movement, which is always nice. It's always nice.
But I love it. Like, there's another one here: herbal tea for hypothyroid. What's that about?
Well, we have this rash of thyroid conditions sweeping the United States, right, and the world. So this is just a gentle tea that contains licorice root. So licorice root helps to boost your energy by supporting your adrenals and giving you a little boost in blood pressure. A lot of hypothyroid people have a tendency to be cold with low blood pressure. It also also licorice root is very nourishing to the spleen. So in Chinese medicine, the spleen is where we're receiving our nourishment and how we're feeding the kidneys. So again, we're looking at energy in the body and how the systems work. And then we have gotu kola in that, and gotu kola is great for the liver, but also great for the mind. And a lot of people with hypothyroid always complain of they can't think, they have brain fog. What's the matter with me? What's the matter with my brain? They feel like they're getting Alzheimer's. So the gotu kola really helps to support the connections and the neural pathways in the brain. It's a classic herb from India that's a relative of the parsley family, so it's also good for the kidneys as well. And let's see, I think we also have red clover in that. And red clover is from the Fabaceae family, so that's the bean family. It's you see it growing wild all over the place. You can walk in any park and you see these little red clover blossoms popping up all over the place. And red clover is phytoestrogenic. And what that will do, because a lot of people with thyroid disease also have trouble breaking down their hormones, right? Breaking down the estrogen. They have a tendency to be cold. And so the phytoestrogens will be on the receptors inside the body. They'll uptake the phytoestrogens, which are the weaker estrogens, which will help to balance out a high estrogen or, someone that's dealing with estrogen problems, as well as it's a traditional liver cleanser. It supports the health of the liver. It's an amazing little herb that grows everywhere. Dan,
wow.
Everywhere.
And you took this to a whole different level. This is fascinating for me. Like, you're not just, not that there's anything wrong with being just a chef. I don't mean like, but this is really you're coming up with foods that actually are designed for specific ailments or to prevent specific ailments. I mean, that to me just takes it to a whole new level. How did you learn this part of it?
Well, from practice and also from ancient medicine, like even Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, he said, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food, right? So we're surrounded by food. The earth naturally provides all of this stuff for human beings and for the other inhabitants of the earth, right? So why is it that we are so broken down, the human population? Why is it that we are suffering with every single disease and all of these crazy things and this chronic illnesses? And then you look into the animal world and you're like, okay, squirrels are functioning well. They're not suffering with the arthritis that we're suffering with, right? They got energy. They're running up and down the trees until they can't anymore. What's going on that human beings are falling apart? And I think that part of it is we've been disconnected from the planet that we're living on and from what the planet naturally provides. So, just let's go back to nature. And I know it sounds really crunchy granola, but let's get back to understanding this earth that we're living on, the seasons and the elements, and how it can support us as human beings. Because why are we here on the planet and not supported? It's not true. We just lost our connection.
We just lost it. Andrea, I always ask my guests what they believe the holy grail of health to be. If I pose that question, what do you think the holy grail of health is? Or maybe even that.
Oh, gosh. I would say look beneath your feet. You're connected to this big, beautiful ball in the universe, right? And when you connect yourself back to the planet that you're living on and to the plants and the animals and all of the things that are growing naturally on this planet, you'll find good health. We just have to really connect.
Andrea Beaman, thank you so much. How would people that want more information, how would they find out about you? How would they get in touch with you?
They can go to www.andreabeaman.com. I give monthly classes, cooking classes, everything online. I have programs with students that are around the world. It's a lot of fun. And I make learning about health a fun experience because Lord knows if I tell you to eat sprouts, you're going to say, listen, I'm out of here.
Andrea Beaman, you are awesome. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, Dr. Dan.
This episode is sponsored by New Jersey Foot and Ankle Center in Oradell, New Jersey. Remember, when you have a foot problem, you've got a foot doctor in the family. Weekend and evening appointments are available. Call us at 201-261-9445. Once again, that's 201-261-9445. Thanks for listening. Check out the show notes over at drdanspeaks.com. If you're loving the show, head over to iTunes and leave us a review, and we'll catch you next time.